Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just talked about some of the most important position coaches in the SEC this upcoming year, and now it's time to talk transfer portal because, man, this has been a crazy transfer portal era. There have been so many guys flying around to different schools, and it's been a little bit hard to keep track of. But I'm going to give you my top 10 impact transfers for this upcoming year. They will decide a lot for their teams. They will decide a lot for conference races in some scenarios. So let's jump right in because this is a very, very interesting topic, and I want to make sure that we. I don't know why that did that. I apologize. There we go. We're all set now. But tons of incredible guys on the move, and it was very, very hard to make this list. There's no two ways about that. There are so many guys that could have been on this list that I bounced around with, but this is the 10 I landed on. I feel pretty good about it. Let's start at number 1, Caleb Downs. And obviously, Caleb Downs is not a quarterback. He is not going to have the biggest effect on the game for the Ohio State Buckeyes this upcoming year, but if you were to ask me, he's the best player in the country. So when the best player in the country jumps to another power program from Alabama to Ohio State, it's an impact transfer. There's no two ways about that. This Ohio State defense has taken a ton of steps forward since Jim Knowles has shown up a couple of years ago. But at the end of the day, this back end of this defense has been at times just missing a little bit. It feels like they're one elite guy away from being absolutely locked down on that back end. So I realize now it says top 10 returning quarterbacks. That is not correct, obviously. Top 10 impact transfers. I apologize for that. But Caleb Downs is a remarkable player. He can do so many things incredibly well and will have a huge impact on the Big Ten and the title race because when you're at Ohio State, you're going to be in both those things. So let's continue on down the list. We got a couple of quarterbacks back-to-back here. Dylan Gabriel going to Oregon is huge for Oregon. Losing Bo Nix is a huge loss, and there were second there where people were wondering what was going to be the next step for them. Was it going to be Ty Thompson taking over the reins? But they went out and found Dylan Gabriel, and then they went out and found Dante Moore. But I tend to believe Dylan Gabriel will be the guy at the end of the day, and he is someone that is very much like Bo Nix, has athletic ability. Bo Nix is definitely more athletic when it comes to running the ball, but is very accurate, can get the ball out efficiently, is very smart, can do a number of things that are pretty remarkable. So I think he's someone that Oregon's going to love. I think he can be in the Heisman race, the Big Ten race, the playoff race, and maybe even the title race. He can bring Oregon to the level that Dan Lanning has been kind of waiting for. And then Cam Ward, someone that came from Washington State to Miami, kind of got out of that Pac-2 while it was still good to get out. And then Miami needed the quarterback a year ago. They had some injuries. Tyler Van Dyke was not playing up to his normal standard. So there was a lot of worry, and then Cam Ward decided to drop out of the NFL draft and come back to school, and he picked Miami, and I think it totally changes their season. They have Xavier Restrepo, Jacoby George, and company, plenty to work with, and I think he opens up the playbook, which is something Shannon Dawson really loved to do while at Houston, but I think the overall athletic ability of Tyler Van Dyke and Emory Williams kind of limited that a little bit at times, but Cam Ward is going to open that back up, no problem about that. So I think he's going to be very interesting. I think Miami second currently in odds to win the ACC after Clemson and Florida State, who are tied up atop. So wide open. They have every chance to jump in and make some noise, and Cam Ward will be a huge part of that. And then let's get to the defensive side of the ball again. We got Walter Nolan going to Ole Miss. I talked about him a little bit earlier, but he's as important of a player for Ole Miss as really anyone, not named Jackson Dart, I should say. He is everything for this defense because an elite interior defensive line in the SEC brings you a ton of different places, and that's exactly what Ole Miss has been missing when they've been missing the SEC championship by just a little bit every single year. So I think adding Walter Nolan is a huge step forward, but he's going to have to do a lot. He's going to have to be an absolute dude week in and week out for them to compete on a consistent basis, and I think he will do it. I don't think there's any question about that. I think he's a top 5 player in the country, and he totally transforms that defense and the team. So the SEC will be seeing a lot more of Walter Nolan this year, and maybe he is the thing that gets Ole Miss over that hump. And then Trevor Etienne, the running back that found his way from Florida to UGA. So definitely some bad blood down in Gainesville for Trevor Etienne, I'm sure. But UGA was kind of in an interesting situation that they have not been in recently. The running back room was not going to be the best room in their building, which is not something that they're used to. There are always dudes in that room, but adding ETN gives you the guy, gives you that number one running back, and then everyone else slots down a position and everything makes sense. I think it's a lot like adding Caleb Downs to the back end of Ohio State, where it just gives everything into the right position and gives you the right amount of players to really explode in the running game, and that's what Mike Bobo needs. Him and Branson Robinson are going to batter teams a lot. They're going to do a ton of really incredible things, and if they can't, then UGA overall could suffer because that pass game has a lot of play action in it. So using that run game is going to be super important. But Trevor Etienne is a guy I'm honestly watching for the Doak Walker Award because we know that guys at UGA are going to have their yards, but Trevor Etienne is a special guy that can break a lot of big plays, so I would be very interested to see what he can do in a UGA uniform this year. And then another guy that found his way out of UGA, actually, Brock Vandergriff. Any quarterback coming into the SEC has a ton on his shoulders, but I think Vandergriff's situation is especially tense and an especially pressure-filled situation, not only because he came into school as a very, very highly rated recruit. He sat for a while at Georgia, and now he's finally getting a shot, but also Kentucky's in a position that they could definitely strike this season. I mean, Jamori Macklin and Barian Brown in the outside is awesome. You have Demi Sumo-Karingbe and Chip Trainum in the backfield next to you. Very solid group. The offensive line is going to be good. Marquez Cox is one of the best offensive linemen in the entire conference. So there's a lot of stuff in place for this Kentucky team. The defense returned a ton of guys. So a lot of this is in place, but at the end of the day, it's Vandergriff. It's the guy that, it comes down to for a lot of teams. The quarterback is going to decide so many things for so many different teams, and Vandergriff is no different. But he's got to get off on the right foot with new OC Bush Hamden that came over from Boise State. If he can, Kentucky's in a very interesting position where maybe some teams are overlooking them, talking about Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, Bama, all these very interesting teams at the top of the SEC, but at the end of the day, Kentucky is a team that's sitting right there just waiting to strike, and if Brock Vandegrift can get off and rolling, they might just be able to. Let's move on down here. Isaiah Bond, a very, very good receiver coming over to Texas from Alabama after Nick Saban retired. Led Bama in receptions a year ago, which is a very good thing for Texas because they lost a ton of experience in that room. They were literally returning 8 total catches in the career of everyone in that wide receiver room until Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden and Silas Bolden all came in because they have totally fixed that. And we won't know what all that looks like until we get on the field, but Isaiah Bond is super important. A.D. Mitchell, Worthy, and Whittington all out the door, so they have to have a leader in that room. They have to have a guy to turn to, a veteran that can kind of show them what work looks like. And Matthew Golden, I think, will be a huge part of that as well. But Isaiah Bond is going to be a huge part of this offense, a huge part of the wide receiver room, and plays a huge role. I'm sure of that. So him and Quinn just have to get off on the same page, because it could be, tough sledding if Quinn and these new receivers are not on the same page, on the same timing to start the year, because there's some tough games to start the year, especially going to Michigan in the second week. But let's keep it rolling here. We'll go back to a couple of edge rushers, the next two guys. Tyler Barron finding his way to Louisville. Took a little bit of a side route, went committed to Ole Miss, and then decided to come back to Louisville. So a huge pull for Jeff Brom, obviously a huge need for this team with a lot of guys going out the door. But if Louisville is going to match up what they did a year ago, this defense is going to have to be a huge part of it. I think Jack Plummer came in with a very good understanding of the offense that they were running. I think Tyler Shuck is coming in with a little bit less of an understanding. So it might be a little bit slower of a start on the offensive side of the ball, and the defense is going to have to come up for that. So the teams that get pressure in the ACC, the teams that get pressure across the country really, are the teams that tend to find themselves in championship weekend and possibly even in the playoffs. So Tyler Barron is super important to this Cardinals team. I think they're going to do a ton of really good things this year, but at the end of the day, guys like Tyler Barron and really that entire defensive side of the ball are just going to be massive for those teams. And then Nick Scourton, a guy that you might not know right now, but you absolutely will at the end of next season. He had 10 sacks a year ago at Purdue, and then found his way over to Texas A&M to join Mike Elko in his first year. And this is something that Texas A&M needed, because there has been a lot of turnover there, a lot of guys transferring out, a lot of guys transferring in. But Nick Scourton is a guy transferring in is going to give you a lot of quality reps. He's going to give you possibly 10 sacks like he did a year ago. So in a world where sometimes in the transfer portal you're taking a chance on a kid, or sometimes someone walks out that's very important to your team production-wise, bringing in a guy that had 10 sacks a year ago never hurts anything. So I'm sure Texas A&M and Mike Elko are very excited to have him there. He's going to be a huge part of that defense and that team's success over this year. And then finally, another quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei, a guy I really enjoy. I think he's a very, very good quarterback and very efficient, and I think he's become more so throughout his college career. Started at Clemson, obviously, found his way to Oregon State for a year, and then is now back in the ACC with Florida State. Ton to like about this kid. Obviously, replacing Jordan Travis is not an easy thing to do from an on-the-field perspective, but nearly impossible when you talk about off the field, because he had such an effect on this team. He did so many incredible things for the culture for this team, for the energy, for getting them to 13-0 after he went down. It's hard to express how much he meant to that team. But DJ Uiagalelei is kind of cut from the same cloth. He is a great leader. He is someone that has a great head on his shoulders and does a lot of really, really good things on the field. So I think if you needed a replacement for someone that can probably not be replaced, I think you found a pretty good one in DJ. So he's has a ton to work with, obviously. Ton of different guys coming in from the transfer portal, like Malik Benson, Roydell Williams from Alabama, that will help him along the way and make this a really fun process. And then, obviously, Mike Norvell, one of the best offensive minds in the country, he has a chance to make a statement. They have a chance to follow up a season where they got disrespected in some ways, they got pushed to the side, and they can follow it up with a great season, but DJ is going to be as big a part of that as anyone. So it'll be very interesting to see how all of that comes into play. I mean, there's so many different guys that I could have gotten to. I'm sure there are guys that I missed. So definitely let me know in the comments your top 10 or some guys that I just straight up missed on that I need to have in the honorable mentions, or I need to have in my top 10 if we do this again. But that's about it for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC College Football Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a ton to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review like the stream, do all that type of stuff. It makes a huge difference for us here at the show. And then also follow us on all the socials, Facebook, Twitter, X, or Twitter. I tend to call it Twitter at this point. But TikTok, Instagram, all of those for all the content updates across every single sport you could think of. We have tons of really incredible people doing great work over here. So, follow over there for any and all updates you could possibly need. But thank you so much for listening, and I will see you tomorrow.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the